The executive sedan segment. Many cars have come and gone. There are few others who have been forever trying to make a mark on this segment. There are some cars that have set new benchmarks with technologies, while some others that are pushing the envelope with the features, creature comforts and the safety tech. And yet, one model line has always defined this segment in India, the Honda City. Now, the first generation Honda City established Honda cars in India. But more importantly, that model was so good that even today, it is sought after by a lot of enthusiasts. Now the City has moved into its fifth generation. That's the car we have with us here today. And Honda is calling it the widest and the roomiest and the longest car in this segment.
Before we get on with the review, let us thank the team at Honda for implementing and following new protocols for providing us with safe and sanitized cars for this review and test. Honda's number one priority right now is to restore the premium image for the brand, and therefore the look and feel of the new City is all the more important. The design of the new car borrows heavily from the Honda Accord than the Civic, and that lends this car a relatively wide-bodied stance over the low-slung and sporty design akin to the Civic. The City's taillights have often had an uncanny resemblance to BMW taillight designs, and the new one follows in that tradition too. But that also makes it the most premium taillight design in this category so far. The thick chrome grille that connects the sophisticated-looking headlights is a polarizing design element. But a sportier gloss black unit could be made available later as a part of an RS trim that Honda is said to be evaluating for the Indian market with a 1-litre turbo petrol engine. While the face looks distinctive, the defining angle for the new Honda City is the side profile, which shows off the car's increased proportions. The only downer for this angle is the lack of insulating material on the wheel wells, which takes away a bit from the premium design.
The Honda designers say that this car's design is inspired by 6-year-olds. The kind of designs that they make for cars, that is what has inspired the design for this car. And I think that is what explains these awkwardly long overhangs that you see at the back and at the front. Now, Honda says that despite the longer overhangs, the ground clearance is still the same. And they are also claiming that the approach and departure angles for this car remain unchanged over the previous model. Though we found out it's not true. The chin is very easy to scrape if you're driving down a ramp or up a ramp. And that is a very common sight these days with a lot of societies, a lot of parking spaces. But the bigger design inspiration comes from the Japanese katana sword. And that inspiration arced seamless crease from the tail lights all the way to the headlamps. Now this crease, this design has also allowed Honda to have a longer nose on the new City and then a proportionately longer boot as well, which is 506 litres now, which is again best in class.
Putting numbers on this design, the new City is 53mm wider, 109mm longer and 6mm lower than the 4th generation model that it will coexist with. The wheelbase, however, remains unchanged at 2600mm.
So the India spec Honda City, at least on paper, has 11mm longer wheelbase as compared to the Thailand model. So maybe we could think of this as an exclusive long wheelbase Honda City for the Indian market, like Mercedes-Benz did with the E-Class. Now I'm not sure if that is true because Honda says that the wheelbase is actually similar for the Thai model and the Indian model. It's just that the measurement techniques are different. Now space was never really a concern in the Honda City, but with the new one, it just takes it to a new level. Look at the kind of knee room that I have. Beautiful space in here. So in terms of space management, very well done. They've made complete use. They've maximized the cabin space as they could. A panoramic sunroof would have really added a lot of roominess to this cabin as well, would have made it feel so much more premium. Unfortunately, that is given the miss, but you do get a smaller sunroof on top of the front seats. You also get a rear window blind, which is a very nice feature to have. But overall, like I said, the comfort of this seating is really nice. I like the angle of the backrest. I like how well bolstered even the headrests are. They are for 3 people, but 3 adults back here is going to be a bit of a squeeze, not because of the space, but more so to do with the kind of bolstering that you have inside this cabin. So 2 adults and a kid is a more comfortable seating arrangement. You also get the center armrest and rear AC vents, and there are 2 power sockets at the back. So there's nothing that the rear seat really leaves you wanting for. It's a nice place to be in.
By increasing the tread, Honda has improved on the shoulder space, while more knee room and foot space at the rear has been achieved by making the front seat slimmer like they did with the Amaze. But they have also made the cushioning 3 times thicker.
The cushioning is also on the stiffer side. And I like the comfort of these seats. The bolstering is nice, it fits nice and snug. So in terms of the comfort, there's no complaint at all. What it only leaves me wanting for is a ventilated cooling function, which ought to have been given considering the competition is already offering it. What I do like about the cabin is, now I've said that Some of the bits like the wheel arches and the lack of the insulating material inside sort of makes it not feel as premium as I would have liked with the City, but the cabin is nice and premium. For example, these soft touch materials on the common touch points, it feels nice. The stitching is also real, so that elevates the premium feel of the cabin. Now these plastics, they are the scratchy type, at least on this panel here. If they would have matched it with the kind of materials and the layout and design that they have, it would have felt really nice. But overall, like I said, it's a nice fit and finish in this cabin. Now we had started seeing a lot of plasticky feel to the cabin in the previous Honda City. We were complaining about it, comparing it to its more plush looking rivals. So this one fixes all of that. This one now starts feeling like a premium car, and that is what the Honda City should be.
Taking prominence on the dash, however, is the 8-inch infotainment screen, which apart from satellite navigation, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, also gets web-link connectivity and connected technologies. But unlike some of its rivals, there's not even a hint of the connected features or even the Idea network status on the infotainment screen. Everything happens through the Honda Connect app on your phone.
Now the Honda Connect app is something we've used in the past as well, but with the previous Honda City there was an OBD device that would sit inside of the car and then it would communicate with your phone. Now there is a SIM card that is embedded within the infotainment system. The network is supported by Idea, so you're at the mercy of Idea's network to use the connected features like most other connected features in other cars. What I really did not like about this infotainment is the display quality. Now the display is bonded closer to the screen, so you do not have a gap between the screen and the touchscreen and all of that, but the display just doesn't look crisp enough to be a 2021 or a 2020 model, right? We have seen better displays in other cars, even in lower price brackets. So this was something that I was really hoping that Honda ups their game with, but unfortunately that has not happened. But in terms of functionality, it's everything that you expect in this particular bracket as of now. In fact, there's something even more. There is the Alexa remote capability, not to be confused with Alexa Auto. Alexa remote is something different. So what it ideally does is if you have an Alexa device at home, then you can also get that device to communicate with this connected tech, with this infotainment. So when you wake up, you can simply ask your Alexa, what kind of fuel do you have in the car right now? What is the fuel status like? And if the fuel is low, then you can also then leave accordingly, leave earlier if you need. You can get all those status alerts. If you have a chauffeur and maybe your chauffeur takes the car out to get a refuel or something and you want to know where the car is, you can simply ask Alexa what are the whereabouts of the car, and Alexa will hopefully tell you the location, because I told you there's geofencing, there's geo-tracking and all of that. So this can communicate it back to your Alexa device, and Alexa can then tell you where the whereabouts of the car are. Now this is not a two-way communication though. In the sense, there is no Alexa Auto, there is no Alexa capability within this infotainment. So if, for example, you have, say, a coffee maker that's Alexa enabled, and if you're driving back home, you can't just simply tell your infotainment to communicate with the Alexa device back home and start the coffee maker and get your coffee ready, or maybe open the garage door. Now those kind of things are not common in India, but you get the point. This is not a two-way communication, but it's still a start. It's a nice function to have, and going forward, I'm sure that two-way functionality will come to other Honda cars and other such devices that will compete with the Honda City.
Along with the wheelbase, Honda has also retained the suspension mounting points of the previous generation City, but the chassis has been revised with newer material ratios for enhanced rigidity. They've also used new bonding and insulation techniques and materials to make the cabin quieter.
Yes, it's a fairly silent cabin to be in, at least at city speeds, but out on the highway, especially on concrete surface like I'm driving on right now, there is a fair bit of booming sound. There's also a fair bit of wind noise that comes up over the wing mirrors, and that I believe is because of the repositioning of the mirrors. The mirrors have been moved slightly back or slightly towards the driver to create a little bit of a ridge between themselves and the slimmer A-pillar that this car has got. That is essentially to give you better cornering visibility. To that effect, Honda has also reduced this window sill. It sits a little lower now. That again contributes towards the better visibility that you get. Now, speaking of wing mirrors, you also get the blind spot assistant camera. You have it on the Civic, you have it on the CR-V, and now it comes to the Honda City as well. Good feature to have. Not really complemented very well by this display. The feed looks very pixelated. It's the same case for the reversing camera as well. They ought to have given a higher resolution screen like I mentioned, and that would have really made it look much better. But it's a good safety feature to have. Now, in terms of safety, it has been given utmost importance in the new City. You can have up to 6 airbags. There's of course ABS and EBD, there's traction control, there's vehicle stability control, you get ISOFIX style seat mounts, all of which has helped this car earn a 5-star Asian NCAP rating.
To that effect, Honda has added a 3-point seat belt for each rear seat occupant, there is a tire pressure monitoring system and a deflation warning system, and the auto headlamps will turn on even in the rains, irrespective of how dark or bright the surroundings are. In the case of an accident or a mechanical malfunction, the Honda Connect app will also automatically contact the service center, the emergency services, and also share the GPS coordinates of the car.
As before, there are two engine options on offer. There is the 1.5 litre i-VTEC diesel and there's a 1.5 litre i-VTEC petrol. But the petrol, that's the one that I'm driving right now, is an all-new motor. It now gets a double overhead cam, it now gets revised internals, it has lighter components, so it's an all-new engine. It's not carried over from the previous one. And the advantages of the new construction is that it is more refined, it is more rev happy, not like the previous version wasn't. That was rev happy too, but this one revs a little more freely, and it's got a more punchier tune as well. Now the power and torque outputs are in the same zone as the previous 1.5 petrol, but with a lighter construction, with a lighter chassis. All of that makes for better performance and better fuel economy is what Honda claims. Now, while the diesel can only be had with the 6-speed manual transmission, the petrol has two options. There is a new 6-speed manual transmission now, which replaces the 5-speed MT in the previous city, and there is the CVT. Now, the 6-speed manual, I love that gearbox. The new one is really nice. It's got those short throws. It's got that click, very slick feeling gearbox that is typical to Japanese cars, and I like the feel of it. Even the clutch pedal feels nice and light, so when you are driving in the city, it is very convenient. So choosing the manual over the automatic is not that big a problem. But of course, you can't ignore the convenience of the automatic. So now that is the one that I'm driving right now. Now Honda says that the new CVT is quicker to read your throttle and braking inputs to reduce the rubber band effect. Now at least out on the highway, when I'm stepping on it, it just keeps revving and revving and revving for far too long before it selects the next ratio. But yeah, when I am stepping on it to pull overtakes, it is quick to make a lower selection, and that's a very good thing. So overtakes don't really need a lot of planning. It's just that pronounced rubber band effect that you get at highway speeds. But in the city, you don't really feel much. In the city environment, I mean, you don't really feel a lot of that rubber band effect, which is a good thing. And then again, it's for the city environment that you are going to be choosing the convenience of an automatic over the charm of a manual transmission. So if you were to go with the CVT, at least in the city, you will enjoy it a lot more than some of the previous generation CVTs that we've experienced with Hondas.
While the chassis is about 4.3 kilos lighter, the engine has gained a bit of weight with the DOHC construction, and the car has become heavier overall with the addition of the safety features. But Honda has compensated for all of that with the tuning. The engine has a linear power build-up, is tuned for a smooth low-end performance than before, and has a stronger punch between the 3 to 6,000 RPM zone. In fact, it even sounds exciting in that zone. But both the gearboxes have a very different character and interact differently with this engine. Cruising at about 100 km an hour at highway speeds needs about 1800 RPM with the CVT, while with the manual, the engine needs 3000 revs. Unsurprisingly then, the petrol CVT offers better highway economy than the petrol manual. The knee room and the foot space for the driver is also roomier now, but instead of a raised dead pedal, Honda has thrown in a traction pad which works equally well.
The diesel engine, well, that is carried over from the previous one, but now it gets the assistance of a DPF, a diesel particulate filter, and the NSC. So with these, it is BS6 compliant. The good news is you do not need any kind of AdBlue or urea injection to keep the emissions under check. So that is one less thing to worry about.
The 6-speed manual on the diesel is just as slick and effortless as in the petrol. The reverse gear, however, has been changed from the constant mesh type to the selective sliding type for lesser jerks and easier operation. The noise insulation for the powertrain has been improved by a fair margin too, and you will only hear the diesel clatter beyond 3000 RPM. At slow speeds, the diesel city feels so refined now that the only thing telling you its fuel type are the pulsations in the clutch pedal.
Now, like I mentioned, the lack of the sound insulating material on the wheel arches gives you that constant tire noise inside the cabin at highway speeds, and you also hear those little pebbles hitting the metal constantly, and that is a bit of a downer. But that apart, what I'm really impressed with is the suspension. The suspension is not noisy at all. Even on some of the sharper bumps, it doesn't have that clunky feel. A lot of Japanese cars have that tinny feel to it, and that's down to the suspension noise. Thankfully, with this car, it's all ironed out. It feels nice and premium, at least as far as the suspension quality goes. And then the ride quality is really up there. It is one of the best that we've seen from Honda so far. I was really impressed with the kind of ride quality that they achieved with the Honda Civic, and now even the City is right up there with it. There is a bit of a softness to the suspension setup. It doesn't feel as taut as some of its European rivals, but when you start pushing it hard around bends, you don't get that wallowy feel. Despite that softness, it doesn't have that wallowy feel. There is a bit of a roll at turn-in. You can feel a bit of a roll on the outer wheel, but that's about it. It's all very nicely controlled, and when you hit a bad patch of road, it just amazes you with the kind of ride quality it offers. It's nice and supple. Nothing really filters into the cabin. Nothing really hits you hard. Nothing is bone jarring in that sense, and that's a very good thing.
While the suspension mounting points are similar to the outgoing car, the components have been redesigned for better endurance and up to 50% less of friction. The real-world gains come in the form of a silent suspension operation even on poor road surfaces. How it ages, though, remains to be seen.
The past couple of generations of the Honda City had a bit of a floaty feel at highway speeds, and I attributed it down to the size of the tires. They were far too skinny in the quest for the highest fuel economy and all of that. But with the new one, even when you hit bumps at high speed, it doesn't unsettle the car. You just saw it right now. And even at speeds over 120 kilometers an hour, it is nice and planted, which is what I like. That floaty feel is all gone. And when you show it some corners, well, it handles quite well as well. The grip is really nice.
A precise, well-weighted steering setup that the new City benefits from certainly has a big role to play in imparting confidence. It is complemented by sharp and progressive brakes. While the handling dynamics are now one of the most balanced in the category, I would recommend fatter and grippier rubber if you are a driving enthusiast. A 195/50 R16 should be a good bet. But for the urban commuter, the stock options that come from Bridgestone or Goodyear that ship with the car are more than capable. The handling characteristics of all the three variants are very closely matched, but the diesel engine runs out of breath far earlier than the petrol. So if I was choosing, I would go with the petrol manual. Do take a close look at the spec sheet to see how these three cars fared in our initial tests. We also managed to squeeze in a highway fuel economy test to add perspective, but the city and overall economy figures will come later with a road test.
Now, summing it up has been easier than ever because this particular week we've been driving all the new entrants in this particular category. We drove the new Verna, we drove the new Rapid, and now we have the all-new Honda City with us. Now, those two cars are obviously facelifted versions of cars that already exist in the market, but this one is all new. Does it take the game forward? Well, it certainly does. Now, some of the features, especially the infotainment, it leaves you wanting for more, not in terms of functionality, but in terms of the way it feels. But apart from that, everything else inside this cabin feels nice and premium. It just feels like what a Honda City should have felt all this while. This one restores that premium feel that you expect of a Honda. And then you have the ride quality, the engine performance, all of which feels like a modern car, all of which feels like a new car, a new age rival to what is existing in the market so far. Of course, it's not making any claims about being the most enthusiastic driving car out there. Neither is it making any claims of being the most fuel efficient car out there. But it ticks all those boxes. The engine has a nice and peppy performance to it. The dynamics match it quite well. And then when you just want a laid back drive, it does that just the way a Honda City always does. So with all those boxes ticked, I think this is truly a generation change, truly a car that presents itself as the new definition of this segment. Now, how the competition will respond, where the competition will take the game is something that remains to be seen. But yet again, the City is the benchmark to beat.